Welcome back to Echoes of History. Tonight, we wake beside the Tiber in the quiet before the city stirs. The air is cool still, washed by the breath of the river. Mist clings to the water, and the bridges rise from it like ghosts of stone. Somewhere far off, a cart rattles over cobblestones, its echo soft and hollow between the buildings. The first light touches the rooftops, slow and gold. Birds gather on the edges of the aqueduct, their wings flashing pale against the sky. Along the riverbank, the fishermen are already at work, silent shapes moving through the fog. Their nets fall with a soft splash, the ripples catching the dawn. From the city above comes the faint sound of sweeping, brooms brushing dust from the stone steps, the quiet preparation of another day. A woman draws water from the well, her shoulders bending with the motion, the rope creaking against the wood. The smell of damp earth, of smoke from the first fires drifts through the streets. The baker lights his oven. The first glow of coals reflects in his eyes as he kneads the dough, his hands moving in the rhythm of habit. Outside his shop, a boy waits with an empty basket, stamping his feet against the chill. The city is waking, one motion at a time. By the river, the fog begins to thin. The sun climbs higher, turning the water to bronze. Boats creak against their moorings, ropes tightening and loosening with the current. A merchant calls across the quay, his voice swallowed by the hum of the awakening streets. The day has begun, not suddenly, but as if it had always been there, waiting for light to reveal it. The city stretches, exhales, and comes alive. The light grows stronger as the morning unfolds. The air thickens with scent, baked bread, crushed herbs, the faint sweetness of figs ripening in the heat. The streets near the river fill with footsteps, slow at first, then gathering in rhythm as the market opens. Voices rise and fall like waves, merchants calling soft. Behind their stalls, the soft rustle of linen, the clink of coins on stone. A boy carries amphorae from the dark, one balanced on each shoulder. The clay sweats with moisture, the river water beading and sliding down its curved surface. He passes a group of women kneeling by the steps, their hands sunk deep into the river, washing cloth that gleams white under the light. The current pulls at the fabric and murmurs around the stones. Beyond the quay, the streets climb upward. The air grows warmer with each turn. Beneath a striped awning, a woman arranges baskets of olives, the green and black shining like glass. The vendor beside her fans away the flies with a bundle of laurel leaves, his mouth moving in silent prayer. The baker's boy returns with his basket full. The loaves are round and golden, their crusts cracked in places where the heat caught them just right. Steam rises faintly as he walks, the smell following him through the crowd. A group of children run past, laughing, their bare feet slapping against the stones, leaving trails of dust behind. In the forum, a marble statue catches the sunlight and throws it back in dazzling flashes. A man sits in its shadow, mending a sandal with thread and bone needle. His hands are quick, steady. Around him, the hum of Rome continues, voices trading, sandals scraping, pigeons cooing from the ledges above. Down by the water, a fisherman empties his net. The catch glitters in the light, silver bodies writhing for a moment before stilling. He counts them under his breath, drops each one into a clay basin half filled with river water. His wife waits nearby, her skirt hemmed dark with damp, a small smile on her face as she watches him. The Tiber gleams brighter now. The bridges hum with movement. Carts, animals, the occasional rider leading a mule. Dust drifts upward in the heat and hangs there, glowing. The sound of the city is not loud, but it is constant, the soft chorus of countless. Selling garlands passes through the market, the flowers pale and fading already. He carries them over one shoulder, their scent fleeting as he moves. He stops near the fountain, offers one to a woman carrying water in a clay jug. She refuses with a smile, but the fragrance lingers as she walks away, mixing with the smell of olives and bread and the faint metallic breath of the river. By midday, the light grows white and still. The shadows shrink beneath the porticos. Merchants pull down. Awnings and the hum of voices quiet. The heat presses down like a hand. Somewhere far off, the sound of hammers from the workshops fades. Even the river seems to slow, its surface smooth and heavy as metal. Rome pauses, not in silence, but in the deep, steady breath of a city that knows the sun will pass soon enough. The Tiber glints beneath it all, carrying light downstream toward the sea. By the hour after noon, the city lies beneath the weight of heat. The light has thickened, pressing against walls, bleeding into the narrow alleys where even the flies have grown lazy. The stones radiate warmth, the air trembles above them. In the marketplace, the voices have fallen away. Cloth hangs still. The smell of dust and grain settles like a low mist. The Tiber moves slowly, its surface too bright to look at. The boats moored along the quay sway in slow rhythm with the current, ropes creaking faintly. One fisherman lies asleep beneath the shadow of his sail, his arm draped of nets. A child nearby trails a stick through the water, watching the ripples spread and vanish. In a shaded courtyard beyond the street, two women grind herbs with stone pestles, their movements unhurried, almost dreamlike. The smell of basil and crushed fennel hangs thick in the air. From a window above them, a faint sound of harp strings drifts down, hesitant notes played by someone practicing. The tune falters, repeats, fades. The baker sleeps now, his head on his arms. Oven. The coals are nearly out. The air in his sharp tastes of smoke and ash. Outside, his boy sits on the step with eyes half closed, tracing circles in the dust with a reed. The bread that remains cools slowly in wicker baskets, their crusts cracking faintly as they shrink. Near the forum, a fountain runs clear. Pigeons gather along its edge, wings twitching in the spray. A man kneels there, splashing his face, his tunic clinging dark with sweat. He drinks deeply, water streaming down his chin, then stands and walks on, leaving wet footprints that vanish almost instantly. The city's rhythm has changed. It is no longer movement, but suspension, a long-held breath between morning and evening. Time here does not pass, it settles. The abacus keeper in the merchant's stall runs his fingers over the worn beads without counting. The guards at the bridge lean against the stone, helmets dull with dust. A fruit seller fans himself with a scrap of papyrus, the figs beside. Faintly under the heat, only the sound of the river remains. Slow, unbroken, it moves beneath the bridges and carries everything stray petals, the last crumbs from the baker's baskets, the reflection of the sky itself, out toward the horizon where the light burns white and endless. Then, at last, a shadow shifts. The sun begins its slow descent behind the rooftops, and the edges of the city soften. From the workshops, the hammering begins again, faint, cautious, returning like heartbeat. After long silence, the scent of smoke rises once more, thin and blue, curling above the houses. A woman steps from her doorway and shakes a rug into the alley. Dust scatters in the new light, turning gold for an instant before falling. Children reappear, chasing one another through the narrow streets, laughter echoing between the walls. The day begins to breathe again. The heat loosens its hold. A breeze moves through the arches, carrying the coolness of the approaching dusk. The city wakes. For the second time, Rome exhales, and the Tiber, darkening now, carries the sound of it away. As the sun sinks behind the western hills, the light over Rome turns liquid and slow. The rooftops glow the color of worn copper, and every shadow lengthens until it touches another. The air, once heavy, grows light again, touched by a faint breeze that smells of smoke, figs, and river water. The sounds of the city return in fragments, sandals scuffing over stone, a gate closing, laughter. Balcony. Evening gathers not all at once, but gently, folding the day inward. By the Tiber, the fishermen wake from their rest. The light off the river has changed, no longer gold, but amber, deep and alive. They pull their nets from the boats and shake them loose, the threads glinting wet in the fading light. A boy empties a small jug into the water, offering the day's last libation without words. Ripples spread outward, faint and perfect, until the river swallows them whole. In the mar, the last vendors pack their wares. The scent of crushed grapes lingers in the air, mingling with the warmth of bread and olive oil. A woman gathers the figs that did not sell, wrapping them carefully in linen before handing them to an old man who has waited patiently in the shade. He nods once, a gesture of gratitude older than speech. Along the bridge, the crowd thins. The stone still holds the heat of the sun, but the air around it cools, filling with the low hum of insects and the distant murmur of voices from the taverns. Across the river, laundry flutters pale against the darkening sky, the day's last light caught in white cloth. Inside the city walls, doors begin to close. Lamps are lit one by one in the courtyards. The glow spills onto the streets in narrow ribbons, trembling on the uneven stones. The sound of footsteps softens. People speak in lower tones. From somewhere near the forum, a single lyre plays, slow and deliberate, its melody carrying just far. Heard above the steady pulse of the river. Brother Odo would have written about the quiet persistence of such a city, but here in Rome, no one writes tonight. The scribes have gone home, the ink hearts covered, the parchment rolled. Only the evening remains, and the faint rhythm of living that never truly stops. The baker, his arms dusted white, slides his last loaves from the oven. The smell of them drifts down the street and into the open windows. A girl runs past, barefoot, her laughter echoing once, then fading into the hum of night. On the terrace above the river, two men sit with their backs to the wall, sharing a jug of watered wine. The light on the water flickers like small fires. One speaks, the other listens. Neither moves to leave. Around them, the city sighs, stone, water, wind, all settling into the rhythm of nightfall. The Tiber itself glows now, a dark mirror to the sky. Reflections of torches ripple across its surface, breaking and reforming with the current. The bridges shimmer like bands of gold. Beyond them, the hills darken to violet, their outlines fading until only their silence remains. When the last bell sounds from the Capitoline, the city stills completely. The voices, the carts, the laughter all fold back into the earth. The only movement left is the water, slow and ceaseless, touching the banks as gently as breath. Above it all, Rome sleeps, not in darkness, but in the quiet gleam of its own endurance, 1,000 lights. Across a city that will wake again, and again, as it always has. The river keeps moving, the air keeps cooling, and the sound of the world narrows to one endless whisper, the steady, eternal pulse of the Tiber flowing through the heart of time. Night settles over the city with the same calm certainty as the tide. The Tiber, dark and wide, holds the reflection of 1,000 wavering lights, lamps hung from bridges, torches by doorways, fires in the small hearths of river huts. The water moves. Quietly beneath them, its surface smooth, carrying fragments of the day downstream. Petals from garlands, crumbs of bread, a drifting feather, the faint echo of voices already gone. The air has cooled. The smell of dust and warmth has given way to damp earth and smoke. The sound of sandals and carts has vanished, replaced by the low, even rhythm of the river and the whisper of wind moving through the arches. The city does not sleep completely, it softens. Rome at night is not silence. Breath, slow, steady, unbroken. In a small house near the forum, a potter sits by the last embers of his kiln. The glow paints his hands in red and gold. He lifts one small cup from the ashes, turning it slowly, testing its surface with his thumb. The glaze has hardened cleanly. He sets it aside, exhales and leans back. His wife has already gone to bed. The sound of her breathing reaches him faintly through the curtain. He sits a while longer, listening to the faint hum of cricket. The window then lowers the flame and lets darkness reclaim the room. By the river, a group of fishermen repair their nets in the torchlight. The thread gleams and fades as it passes through their fingers. They speak rarely, their words small, practical. Above them, bats flicker in the air, tracing invisible paths against the pale edge of the moon. The water laps softly at the stone steps. Across the bridge, a night watchman makes his rounds. His footsteps echo in rhythm, the metal ring of his staff tapping once, twice, then pausing. He carries a lantern that sways gently, its glow catching the outline of statues along the walls, faces worn by time, eyes turned upward, unseeing but eternal. He pauses by one, the marble smooth beneath his fingertips, and whispers a greeting as if to an old friend. Farther inland, in a courtyard shaded by vines, an oil lamp burns on a small altar. A woman kneels there, alone, her head bowed. The flame wavers as a breeze moves. The smell of olive oil and smoke fills the air. She does not pray for anything in particular, only for the day's peace to last, for the city's quiet to hold. The baker's shop is dark now, but the oven still radiates heat. A stray cat curls beside it, tail flicking against the floor. From the street outside comes the faint creak of wood as a cart passes, drawn by a mule half asleep, its hooves soft on the dust. The hills beyond the city glow faintly under starlight. Villas there. Torches leaving trails of smoke that rise and fade. In the lowlands, the fields shimmer faintly with dew. The whole valley seems to breathe with the same slow rhythm as the river, as if all of it, from marble to soil to air, were one living body at rest. The watchman passes again along the embankment. He pauses once more to look out across the water. The reflections move like molten gold, breaking and reforming endlessly. Somewhere below, a heron stirs, spreading its wings with a soft. Before taking flight, its shadow gliding over the surface of the river. The man lifts his lantern slightly, watching until the bird vanishes into the darkness. Then he turns and continues on his path, his steps merging once again with the slow pulse of the city. Above him, the moon rises higher, pale and unhurried. It washes the rooftops in silver and settles over the ruins, over the walls, over the quiet river winding through the sleeping heart of Rome. Nothing moves quickly now. The return to stillness. The same stones that burned beneath the sun now hold the coolness of night. The same water that shimmered gold now gleams white beneath the stars. And in that silence, between the river's whisper and the faint hum of wind, the city dreams. It dreams of dawn, of work, of bread and laughter and sun, of everything that will come again, just as it always has. The Tiber flows on, carrying with it the memory of every sound, every light, every breath that passed along its banks, eternal, patient, unchanging like Rome itself. Toward the deepest part of the night, the air grows clear and weightless. The moon hangs high above the city, washed in silver, its reflection trembling along the slow curve of the Tiber. The noise of day has long vanished. Even the river seems hushed, its current gliding smooth beneath the arches. The world has reduced itself to light and shadow, water and stone. The streets are nearly empty. In the lower quarters, a few lamps stick. Behind shuttered windows, their glow seeps through the cracks in the wood, falling in thin lines across the cobbles. A single figure walks there, an old man carrying a bundle of reeds over his shoulder. He moves without hurry, his sandals whispering softly, his path lit only by the moon. He pauses once, setting the reeds down beside a doorway, and stands listening. The city breathes faintly around him. By the river, the fishermen sleep. Their nets hang drying along the posts, stirring still. In the night breeze, the torches have burned out, leaving only the pale light of the moon touching the water. A clay jug tips slowly in the sand, empty now, its rim wet with dew. In the reeds, frogs croak low, irregular, like distant drums. Up near the forum, the marble reflects the starlight. The columns stand like pale ghosts, their shadows stretching long and cold across the pavement. A stray dog moves between them, silent except for the faint tap of its claws. The sound. fades. The night watchman passes once more over the bridge. His lamp is nearly out, the flames small but steady. The metal of his armor glints dully, catching the moon as he turns. He stops midway across and leans on the parapet, looking down. The water beneath him seems endless, black, smooth, alive. He thinks of nothing. He listens. Somewhere far away, a door closes, the sound carrying faintly through the air. Inside the houses, the city dreams. A mother stirs beside her, sleeping. Turns in his bed, murmuring a name half forgotten. The smell of cooling oil and burnt wick lingers in every room. From an open window, a curtain moves like breath, revealing the sky beyond, vast, silent, unbroken. At the edge of the city, the fields gleam faintly with mist. A few shepherds lie among their flocks, their cloaks drawn tight, their fires burn down to coals. The sheep move softly in their sleep, the bells at their necks giving off a faint, irregular music. The wind that pass. Over them smells of wet grass and distant rain. Hours pass unnoticed. The stars begin to pale one by one, fading into the soft blue of approaching dawn. The river catches the first hint of color, not gold yet, but gray, smooth as smoke. The night loosens its hold. The watchman starts once more before his post, his lantern now dark. He sets it down, stretches his shoulders, and looks toward the horizon. The line between earth and sky brightens. The roofs of the city. Certain, the first bird calls, then another. By the time the sun reaches the edge of the world, the Tiber is already alive with light. The fishermen stir. The baker opens his shutters. Smoke rises from the chimneys once more. Rome wakes unhurried, unchanged, and the long whisper of the river folds seamlessly into the new day. The city breathes in, and the rhythm begins again. Stone, water, work, light. The sound of sandals returns to the streets. The Tiber gleams. The world continues. Begins without fanfare. It comes not as a burst, but as a slow unveiling, a thin grey light creeping across the rooftops, softening the edges of every column, every arch, every stone that has held the weight of centuries. The stars fade gently, one after another, until the sky turns a color like cooled ash. The river is still, waiting. Then, somewhere upriver, a bird calls a single note, pure and high. The sound ripples outward, joining the murmur of the water. A breeze moves. Arches, carrying with it the scent of wet clay and smoke. The light thickens. The first true gold of morning spills across the bridges, touches the domes, and slides down the walls of the city until it reaches the narrow streets below. Rome wakes again. At the baker's shop, the coals glow red. The air is heavy with the smell of yeast and fire. The boy stirs the dough with hands still half asleep, his movements slow but practiced. The sound of the paddle against the stone trough echoes faintly, blending with the soft scrape of sandals outside. Soon the first loaves will rise. The oven breathes warmth into the cool dawn. By the river the fishermen return to their boats. Their nets, stiff with dew, glisten faintly in the growing light. They push off from the steps, oars dipping into the dark water. The river moves with them, silent except for the faint splash that follows each stroke. One man hums under his breath, a tune older than words, older even than Rome itself. In the streets, above, shutters open. Women sweep the thresholds, the sound of straw brooms soft against the stone. Dust rises in thin spirals, catching the sunlight. Somewhere, a mule brays. The smell of oil and grain begins to drift from the kitchens. A water carrier passes down the alley, his shoulders bent under the weight of the amphory. The sound of the liquid inside, the steady slosh, the hollow thud of clay, keeps time with his steps. He pauses by a doorway where a child waits with a copper bow. Fills it, nods, and continues on. Behind him, the trail of his passing gleams briefly in the morning light before fading into shadow again. In the forum, the marble gleams as though freshly washed. Pigeons gather along the cornices, their wings flaring white. Merchants arrive one by one, laying out their goods beneath the awnings, fruit, cloth, bronze, bread. The air hums with quiet preparation. A single drop of water falls from the edge of a fountain, followed by another, marking the of the city's awakening. The Tiber brightens. Its surface glows now, a living mirror that reflects both the sky above and the slow movements along its banks. Barges glide through the light, the ropes creaking softly. The oarsmen do not speak. Their arms move in unison, the same pattern repeated countless mornings before. By mid-morning, the city has found its voice. It is not loud, never truly loud, but full, layered, alive. The clatter of wood on stone, the murmur of trade, the tapping of hammer against bronze. A baker laughs somewhere, his voice echoing briefly through a side street. Children run past a fountain, their feet scattering the pigeons into flight. The air tastes of dust, heat, and the faint sweetness of crushed grapes from the wine stalls. Near the bridge, an old woman sells garlands of laurel and rose. She sits in the shade, her hands busy with the weaving, her eyes half closed against the light. A soldier stops to buy one. She ties it gently around wrist and murmurs a blessing. He nods and walks on, the scent of the flowers trailing behind him. The river, constant and unhurried, flows beneath it all, the silent witness to every motion, every life. A piece of driftwood turns lazily in the current. A fish breaks the surface, then vanishes again. Reflections shimmer and break, reforming into new patterns that last only an instant before changing once more. The sun climbs higher, and the streets begin to shimmer. The air thickens again, heavy with warmth. The vendors retreat beneath their awnings, dogs sleep in the shadows of the columns. Time slows. Even the river seems to move more softly, its waves smaller, its rhythm slower. In a quiet courtyard, a painter sits with his tools. Before him, a fresco half-finished, figures of guards and river spirits, their faces pale under layers of color. He grinds pigment with oil, his hands stained with red and ochre. The sound of the pestle against the stone bowl is steady, med. Dust motes turn in the sunlight that slants across the wall. The world, for a moment, is perfectly still. At the edge of the city, the fields shimmer gold beneath the sun. Farmers bend low to gather grain, their movements slow, the straw whispering around them. Beyond them, the hills fade into the haze, soft and indistinct. The same hills that have watched this city rise and fall and rise again. By the time the bell sounds from the temple, the city's noise has grown distant, stretched thin back. Heat and distance reduced to a single low hum that mingles with the wind. The Tiber glows, bright as molten bronze, and through it all Rome endures, not striving, not resting, but existing in its eternal rhythm, light, labor, silence, renewal. The city breathes. The river carries its reflection onward, and the day continues, the same as every day before, the same as every day to come. By the height of afternoon, the city moves beneath a vast and colorless sky. The air no long trembles. Heat gathers in the courtyards and presses through the narrow streets, pooling in every hollow space. Even the shadows hold warmth. The sound of the river softens until it is no more than a slow exhale. The marble walls seem to glow from within. Their pale surfaces blur at the edges where light and dust mingle, where the air becomes a haze of gold. The bridges hum faintly with the passage of carts, hooves striking stone, wood creaking under weight. The rhythm never changes, persists like a heartbeat too steady to notice. Along the riverbank, men repair the ropes that bind their boats. The hemp smells of salt and age, the fibers rough against their palms. Their hands are dark with river silt. They work without speaking. The sound of the strands tightening, twisting, releasing, this is their language. Behind them, the Tiber moves slow and heavy, its surface dappled with sunlight. A woman pours water into a basin at her doorway. The clay vessel darkens where it wet, leaving traces of coolness that vanish quickly. She lifts her skirt, kneels, and scrubs a linen cloth against the stone. The rhythm of her work matches the river's flow. When she wrings it out, The droplets scatter and glitter in the air before sinking into the dust. Children play nearby, their laughter brief and bright. They throw pebbles toward the water, counting the skips. Each one disappears with a small sound, swallowed by the endless murmur of the current. When their game ends, they sit quietly, watching sunlight ripple across the arches. One of them traces the outline of a fish on the ground with a stick, then smooths it away with his foot. In the market, the heat has thinned the crowd. The air smells of figs, resin, and the faint tang of copper coins. Vendors fan themselves with bits of papyrus, their voices softer now, slower, as though the heat has entered their lungs. A few buyers linger, negotiating without urgency. A handful of olives changes hands. A loaf of... The exchange is small, unremarkable, one of 1,000 such gestures that keep the world moving without effort. Farther inland, the forum lies in stillness. The stone columns throw long shadows that cross one another like sundials. Pigeons walk between them, their wings making faint, leathery sounds. A soldier rests in the shade, helmet beside him, eyes half closed. His sword leans against the wall, reflecting a thin line of light. He breathes deeply, slowly, as though the city it. Breathing through him, the baker's boy passes again, now with an empty basket. Crumbs cling to the cloth inside. He wipes his brow, leaving a faint streak of flour on his skin. The smell of bread lingers on him as he walks, a soft, invisible trail in the air. He glances toward the river, where the fishermen are mending their nets, then disappears into an alley, swallowed by the shade. The afternoon lengthens. Time begins to dissolve into stillness. In a courtyard not far from the temple, Old Man sits with a tablet across his knees. He traces faint marks in the wax with a stylus, not to write, but to remember the motion of it. His lips move without sound. When he looks up, the world seems blurred by light, the trees, the walls, the fountain at the center. The air itself feels alive, shifting softly, breathing in rhythm with the day. Above him, a curtain flutters from a window. A woman leans out, emptying a small bowl of lentils for the pigeons. They gather in a quick wings. She watches them eat, then withdraws, leaving the bowl in the sun. The light deepens. The river darkens from gold to amber, from amber to bronze. The air cools barely, but the change is enough to stir the city awake again. The vendors begin to lift their awnings. The sound of carts returns, wheels striking the uneven stones, the muted calls of drivers guiding their animals through the narrow ways. At the river's edge, one fisherman casts his line for the last time that day. The thread gleams briefly, then disappears into shadow. He waits without impatience. The water moves beneath him, endless and sure. Soon the bells will sound from the Capitoline, and the city will shift once more from work to rest, from heat to the slow unfolding of evening. But for now, Rome holds still. The river glides, the air glows, and every breath of the city carries the same quiet truth that nothing here truly ends. It only passes gently into another hour, by the late hours of. When the sun leans westward and the city begins to turn its face toward evening, Rome becomes something softer, slower, suspended between waking and rest. The light thickens into a color too deep to name, not gold, not orange, but the hue of warmth seen through dust. Every stone surface glows with it. Every arch throws a longer shadow. The river, once brilliant, darkens and quiets, its light now broken into moving shards that dance against the walls of the bridges. The heat, its weight, the air breathes again. The murmur of voices returns gradually, like a tide creeping back across the sand. Markets rouse, doors open, footsteps stir in the narrow lanes. The long stillness of noon releases the city in fragments, a wheel turning, a gate closing, a voice calling softly for another. By the Tiber, fishermen sought their day's catch. The fish gleam dull silver now, the brightness gone from their scales, but still they glisten in the last sunlight. The men's hands move steadily, wiping, counting, coiling the nets. They work in rhythm as they always do, their talk low and even, blending with the sound of water lapping at the stone. The smell of river salt and wet hemp hangs thick in the air. On the quay, a girl crouches beside her father's stall, arranging baskets of bread and figs. She hums to herself, a tune with no words, only breath and melody, the same her mother sang years ago. The sound floats upward, carried by the wind that moves now through them. Arches, dust rises, glows, falls again. At the baker's shop, the coals have been stoked anew for the evening loaves. The scent of fresh dough mingles with that of smoke and honey. The baker wipes his hands on his apron, lifts one loaf, presses it gently to test its weight. It's right. He sets it aside, reaches for the next. Behind him, the walls pulse with the heat of the oven. Before him, the window stands open, showing the street beyond bathed in the color of setting light. The city hum. Small movements. Women return from the river with damp hems and clay jars balanced on their shoulders. A cart of grain rattles past, its wheels tracing twin grooves into the dust. Children chase the fading light down the alleys, their laughter rising briefly, bright and unguarded, before fading behind the turn of stone walls. In the forum, the marble seems to breathe. Shadows stretch across its surface, reaching toward one another, then melting into the seams between slabs. Unchanged, their faces softened by the warmth, their eyes filled with the last reflection of the sun. Around them, the pigeons return to their ledges, wings flashing white before settling. Near the temple steps, a group of craftsmen tidy their tools. Bronze filings scatter like glitter in the dirt. One man dips his hands in a bucket of water, the sound sharp in the quiet air. He lifts them out slowly, droplets shining along his arms. He does not dry them. He watches the light on his. It fades, then turns and leaves without a word. As the hour bends toward evening, the light begins to withdraw. It moves upward first, retreating from the streets, climbing the walls, touching the high windows, then finally leaving only the sky aglow. The wind shifts, cooler now, carrying with it the smells of bread, smoke, and the faint metallic tang of the river. From the hills, the shepherds descend. Their voices drift through the outer gates, calling softly to one another as the sheep shuffle past, their bells giving off small, uneven notes. The dust of the road follows them in a golden haze that catches the last rays of sun before dissolving into twilight. In the courtyards, oil lamps are lit one by one. The light from each is small, but together they weave a web of warmth through the city. Their flames flicker in the breeze, casting restless shapes on the walls. The sound of sandals returns to the cobbles, slow, deliberate, no longer hurried. The Tiber changes a surface reflects not the sun, but the first trembling lights of evening, torches along the bridges, lamps near the water's edge, the faint gleam of stars above. It carries them all, breaking each reflection into fragments that shimmer, fade, and reform with the current. At a tavern near the river, a lute begins to play. The sound is faint, almost hesitant, a melody built from repetition, simple as a prayer. A few voices join in, not to sing but to hum. The music drifts upward. Rooftops through the columns into the cooling air. It does not rise high enough to reach the hills, but it reaches the river, and the river carries it away. The city exhales. The day loosens its hold. Rome, for a moment, is neither awake nor asleep, only existing, balanced perfectly between light and dark. And then the sun is gone. What remains is glow, of windows, of water, of memory. The first stars reveal themselves one by one, reflected faintly in the river below. The slows again, not silence, but the deep, endless murmur of time continuing unseen. A fisherman ties his last knot. A baker closes his shutters. A mother hums her child to sleep. The Tiber moves through it all, constant, patient, reflecting every glimmer of light as it has for centuries, carrying them onward, folding the day into the night, Rome into eternity. Night arrives not as a single moment, but as a slow descent. the color draining gently from the sky, the warmth of breath at a time. The city yields to it willingly. Torches are lit along the bridges, their flames bowing in the wind. Oil lamps glow behind shutters, thin ribbons of light slipping through the cracks. The river catches every flicker, multiplying them into a trembling constellation that moves with the current. The first cool air of evening slides down from the hills, carrying with it the scent of cypress and damp earth. The heat lifts from the streets, leaving only memory. A faint mist begins to rise from the Tiber, softening the edges of the arches, blurring reflection and form. The marketplace is nearly empty now. Only a few stalls remain open, their owners finishing the day's trade in quiet exchanges. A man counts coins slowly in the dim light. Another gathers bruised fruit into a basket, humming a tune that fades as he works. The voices here no longer compete, they blend, forming a low, steady rhythm like the tide. A potter walks home carrying his wheel. Clay to the elbows. He moves carefully through the narrow streets, his sandals brushing the dust, his shadow long on the wall beside him. From one of the windows above, a woman pours out a small basin of water. It splashes near his feet, and the smell of cool stone rises sharply into the air. Farther down, at the river steps, a fisherman kneels to wash his hands. The water is dark and cold. He looks up once, watching the lamps ripple across the surface, then back down at his reflection. Unsteady, disappearing and returning in the same instant. He wipes his hands on his tunic and stays there for a while, saying nothing, listening to the sound of water against the stones. On the hill above the forum, the temples stand luminous under moonlight. Their marble columns gleam faintly, pale against the night. Between them, the air feels lighter, cooler. A priest walks the perimeter, the hem of his robe brushing the floor. He stops at the altar, adjusts the wick of a lamp, and leaves it burning, a single flame to keep the night intact. Below, the city hums softly. Laughter drifts from a courtyard where a few neighbors share their meal. The sound of clay cups clinking carries through the stillness. Someone plucks a stringed instrument, slow, uncertain notes that seem to dissolve before reaching the walls. The night swallows every sound gently, without echo. The baker's door is closed, but warmth still seeps through the cracks. The scent of bread lingers in the air, faint, sweet, mixed with smoke. A cat sits on the windowsill, tail curling lazily, eyes half open to the dark street. Across the way, a shutter creaks, a lamp is extinguished. The Tiber moves without pause. Its banks are empty now except for the night watchman. He walks his slow circuit, his lantern swinging from his hand. The light flickers across the stones, catching for a moment on carvings, steps, fragments of the day left behind. He pauses at the center of the bridge, resting his palm. Parapet. The wind stirs his cloak. Below him, the river breathes vast, patient, endless. He looks east toward the faint red haze that still lingers beyond the horizon, then west, where the hills sleep in shadow. Between them lies the city, vast and untroubled, cradled in its own stillness. From somewhere distant, a bell sounds one deep note, slow and final. Its echo rolls across the rooftops, fading until it becomes indistinguishable from the whisper of the river. The watch. On. His steps fall in rhythm with the water. Each sound, each reflection, each breath of wind folds into one continuous motion, the eternal pulse of the city after dark. Rome sleeps, but it does not rest. Beneath the calm lies movement, the steady flow of water, the flicker of flames, the quiet turning of the world. The moon climbs higher, pure and cold, and the Tiber gleams like liquid glass. Its surface carries everything, the shimmer of torches, the scent of bread, the faint voices. All of it drifts downstream, toward the sea, toward the unseen horizon where the past and the present dissolve together. And when the last lamp burns low and the city lies still, the river keeps its vigil, flowing, whispering, reflecting the weight of time itself. Rome, eternal, breathes through the silence. The night holds its shape. The water moves on. In the deep of night, Rome becomes weightless. The air, cooled from the long day, carries no scent of smoke now, only stone, and the faint sweetness of distant cypress. The city no longer feels solid. Its edges blur beneath the moonlight. Its streets seem wider, emptier, as if carved not by hands but by time. The wind moves softly through the arches, bending the flame of every torch. Shadows lengthen, then vanish. The Tiber glows with a subdued silver light. It moves without sound, a slow mirror reflecting the scattered stars above. The bridges stretch across it like pieces of bone, pale, smooth. Ripple on the surface breaks their shape, reforms it and breaks it again. The water never stops. The city never stirs. On the upper terraces, the wealthier homes sleep behind their high walls. The courtyards are dark, except for a few low lamps that burn with thin, flickering wicks. Somewhere a fountain still runs. Its trickle echoes between columns, steady and fragile, like a voice repeating itself through centuries. The pool beneath it gleams faintly, stirred only by the fall of water. A servant moves through the shadows, bare feet whispering on the marble. He carries a tray of oil lamps, checking each one in turn, trimming the wick, refilling the bowl. The flame flares, steadies. His face remains expressionless. He moves on, his figure swallowed again by the darkness between the pillars. Down near the river, another kind of night breathes. The poorer quarters never fall fully silent. A door creaks, a voice murmurs, a cart shifts its weight on uneven ground. A woman crosses. Small, square, carrying a bundle of cloth against her chest. Her steps echo faintly. The fabric smells of river water and ash. She vanishes into an alley without a sound. The city seems endless from here, not in size, but in depth. Every wall hides another, every silence another layer beneath it. The moonlight reveals only outlines, the slant of a roof, the curve of an amphora, the distant silhouette of the Capitoli. In the forum, the marble gleams like ice. The statues cast long, that reach toward one another but never meet. A thin mist gathers near the ground, curling around their feet. The eyes of the stone figures catch the moonlight, hollow and distant. They seem awake but not alive. The silence here feels older than speech. Farther out, along the river road, the night watchman pauses again. He stands by a torch set into the wall, the flame low and blue. His armor no longer gleams, it absorbs the darkness instead. He listens, not for danger. Time is still moving. The sound he hears is always the same. Water against stone, the soft brush of wind over sand, the distant sigh of Rome in its sleep. Across the river, a single window still glows. Behind it, an old scholar sits at his desk, bent over a wax tablet. The lines he writes are slow, deliberate, his hand steady even as the candle gutters beside him. He pauses often, not to rest, but to listen. Outside, the city seems to breathe through the walls, fain. His stylus once more and continues, his words a quiet conversation with the dark. The night deepens, the stars sharpen, the air grows perfectly still. Even the river slows, as if the entire world has taken one long breath and chosen not to release it. A dog barks once in the distance, then nothing. At the temple on the hill, the priest returns to extinguish the final lamps. He moves through the colonnade, shadow passing over shadow, until only one flame remains, a single. The altar, he kneels, bows his head and breathes upon it. The flame flutters, contracts, disappears. Smoke curls upward, dissolving into the air. Below, the Tiber swallows another reflection. The bridges turn pale again, their stones catching the dim glow of the moon. The mist thickens along the water's edge, rising in tendrils that wind through the empty streets. It blurs the lines between earth and air, wall and river, memory and dream. In that stillness, time loses its direction. The city could be ancient or unborn, it makes no difference. The same river flows, the same breath stirs the dust, the same faint rhythm continues beneath everything. and when the first tremor of dawn begins to touch the horizon, no color yet, only a suggestion of change, the Tiber brightens slightly, as if waking before the city. Its surface trembles once, then smooths. Somewhere a door opens. A footstep sounds. The night releases its hold. Rome, infinite in its silence, begins. Tremor of dawn spreads like a slow breath through the city. At first, it is not light but temperature, a soft, imperceptible rise in warmth against the stone. The air loses its weight. The darkness grows thin, and the outlines of things, walls, columns, doorways, bridges, begin to return, one by one, as if remembering themselves after a long forgetting. The Tiber is the first to wake fully. The water shifts from black to grey to silver. The mist that clung to it all night withdraws in, leaving behind a thin sheen that catches the faintest hint of colour. Birds gather along the parapets, silent for a moment, waiting for the light to find them. When it does, they lift their heads and begin to call, hesitant notes that expand through the still air, announcing the hour before any bell can. Up on the hills, the villas emerge slowly from shadow. Their courtyards gleam with dew, the vines on their walls shine with a pale wetness. Servants move like ghosts through the archways, unbolting doors, drawing water, opening shutters to let in the day. The world here returns to movement without command, each action older than memory, repeated for generations, unchanged. In the lower streets where the air is cooler and the river smell lingers, the first smoke rises. A baker feeds his oven with dry twigs. The sound of them cracking carries far in the morning stillness. The coals flare orange, painting the walls with a restless light. He kneads dough with slow, sure motion. His breath visible in the chill. His boy sweeps the floor, the soft brush of straw echoing through the narrow street. Soon, the smell of yeast and ash fills the air, thin at first, then rich and whole. The watchman who has walked the night alone crosses the final bridge. His lantern has burned out. He does not relight it. The metal of his armor is dull now, streaked with condensation. He stops once more at the center of the span, watching the river turn to light. For a long moment he listens. Not to the city waking, but to the silence beneath it, the faint pulse that never ends. When he finally continues on, his steps sound lighter, almost absorbed by the dawn. Across the river, the fishermen return. Their boats drift close to the bank, the oars dipping in rhythm with the slow current. The water glows beneath them, soft as molten glass. They speak little, their voices quiet but certain, breaking the stillness without disturbing it. Nets are drawn, tied, folded, Jess. Countless times before, without thought, a boy leans over the side of one boat, touching the water with his fingertips. The surface breaks around them, forming circles that spread, widen, vanish. In the forum, the marble columns catch the first sunlight. Their edges glow briefly before the warmth reaches the ground. The statues stand unchanged, but for a moment they seem alive, their faces turned toward the east, their eyes catching the same light that once saw them carved. Dustly. Streams, golden, trembling in the quiet air. The marketplace stirs again. Merchants unfold their awnings. The fabric, damp with dew, darkens as it dries. Crates are set down, lids removed, baskets filled. Figs, olives, grain, bread, the same offerings, the same exchange, the same rhythm. A few early buyers pass through, their sandals whispering against the stones. The sound is soft, like breathing. The Tiber grows bright now. It mirrors the sky, carrying its new color downstream. Deepening into amber, the bridges cast long shadows over its surface, ribbons of darkness sliding slowly with the current. On the far side, a farmer leads a mule along the embankment, the animal's hooves thudding softly against the damp earth. The smell of water and soil rises together, clean and heavy. Everywhere, sound returns, doors opening, footsteps crossing courtyards, distant voices greeting one another with words too old to notice. The city expands outward, stretching into light. The The baker sets his loaves on the window ledge to cool. The steam lifts from them in thin threads, catching the sun. Across the street, a woman empties a bowl of lentils into a pot. The scent of the river fades, replaced by the smell of cooking and life. Rome is awake again, not loudly, not suddenly, but with the slow inevitability of the tide. The light reaches every corner, filling every silence. The night withdraws completely, leaving only the faint echo of its passing in the quay. Space is between sounds. The river flows on, carrying the color of morning toward the sea, and above it, the city breathes, ancient, luminous, unchanged. As the morning matures, the light hardens into certainty. Shadows shorten, colors deepen. The stones of Rome absorb the sun, their dampness drying into warmth. What was gray turns gold. The faint mist that clung to the river has vanished entirely, leaving only the glint of moving water and the low, continuous murmur of the Kur. Fully awake now, though it does not rush. Its movement is measured, deliberate, a living thing that has learned patience from time itself. The streets are narrow channels of light and dust. The sound of sandals on cobblestone becomes the city's pulse. By the Tiber, the fishermen unload their catch. The scales of the fish glisten under the sun, like coins scattered upon the stones. They sort the catch into baskets, pour water over them to keep the bodies cool. The water runs in thin streams. Across the quay, tracing paths that vanish into the river again. A boy crouches to follow them with a finger, smudging the dust into small, dark lines. The smell of bread drifts down from the bakeries, rich, sweet, faintly burnt at the edges. The smoke from their chimneys hangs low, spreading like a veil across the rooftops. Every breath carries its trace. Near the forum, a vendor roasts chickpeas in a shallow pan. The hiss of oil punctuates the air like small bursts of rain. The Mar. Alive once more. A woman sells honey from clay jars, each sealed with a thin layer of wax. She breaks one open for a customer. The scent is heavy and golden, the color deep as amber. Beside her, another arranges figs on a tray of wet leaves, their purple skins shining in the light. Flies hum lazily around her hands, brushing against her wrists before flying off again. An old man sits in the shade of an archway, sharpening a blade on a whetstone. The sound is clean, regular. Does not look up as people pass. His rhythm never changes. Behind him, the stone wall bears marks from years of the same movement, grooves where his hands have rested, a faint polish from the brush of his sleeve. Down the street, children play with clay marbles. They throw them softly, rolling them over the stones, watching them bounce and come to rest. Their laughter rises and fades like a wave, echoing faintly off the walls before dissolving into the general hum of the city. That carries all of it, sound, scent, warmth. Its surface gleams like metal, but beneath the shine lies the same slow movement that has always been. Near one of the bridges, a washerwoman beats cloth against the stones. The rhythm is steady and soft, echoing through the arches above her. Water splashes over her arms, her dress clings to her legs. When she lifts the fabric, droplets scatter, catching the sun in a brief shimmer before falling back into the current. A cart rumbles past, clattering, the mule's bridle chiming faintly. The driver hums a tune that has no melody, only a pattern of breath. The dust rises behind him, drifts and settles again. Nothing lingers long in the air here. Every motion becomes part of the same slow rhythm, rising, passing, returning. In a small courtyard behind the temple, a group of craftsmen work in silence. Their hands move over marble, chiseling fine lines into its surface. The air is filled with the soft, dry tap of mud. Chips fall like snow, gathering in small white drifts along the floor. One man pauses to wipe his brow, leaving a pale streak across his skin. He looks up once, watching sunlight fall through the narrow opening above, then lowers his gaze and continues. The day advances without notice. The light grows fuller, pressing into every space. The color of the river deepens from silver to gold, from gold to a shade that cannot be named. And yet, in all this movement, there is no urge. Chase its hours, it allows them to unfold. The same gestures repeat, the same words, the same sounds, the same air breathed and released. At the height of morning, the city stands entirely alive and entirely still. The Tiber flows at its heart, indifferent and eternal, carrying fragments of every life that touches it, dust from sandals, ashes from ovens, petals from garlands, reflections of faces that will soon vanish from the water's surface. All of it drifts downstream, toward the unseen sea. And above it, the city glows, not in splendor, not in grandeur, but in the quiet permanence of existence itself. By the time the sun reaches its highest point, the air over the Tiber trembles with heat. The sky has turned to a white, unbroken blaze, and the light no longer falls in beams but in a steady flood that seeps into every stone and wall. The city softens beneath it, shapes blur, colors fade, sound itself grows thick and slow. The markets, dawn, have fallen into half-silence. Only the occasional call of a vendor drifts through the heat, dull and far away. A jug tips over somewhere, the splash of water quick and final, and then the air closes again. The smell of the river thickens, warm mud, fish, old rope, dust baked to sweetness. A dog lies stretched in the shade of a cartwheel, its ribs rising and falling. A child crouches beside it, drawing with a stick in the dust. The lines melt as quickly as they're made. Farther down, alley, two women rest against a wall, shawls over their heads, speaking without moving their lips. The sound of their voices is more breath than word. By the river, the fishermen have stopped working. They sit in the shade of their overturned boats, the wooden hulls creaking faintly as they shift. One of them chews on a stem of grass, staring at the water. Another mends a net not because he must, but because his hands need to move. The heat presses even the river flat. No ripple, no wave. The slow glitter of light sliding across its surface. The baker's oven has gone quiet. The coals lie dim under their own ash. Inside the shop, the air is heavy with the scent of flour and smoke. A loaf cools on the sill, its crust crackling faintly in the heat. Across the street, a curtain stirs, the only movement for a long time. In the forum, marble burns the souls of those who cross it. The columns shimmer. The statues seem to sweat, their faces alive with the illusion of breath. A single pigeon flutters up and lands on a shoulder of stone, blinking in the brightness, unafraid. And still, life continues, though in smaller motions. A girl pours water over the steps, watching the dust turn to dark clay that dries again almost instantly. A man lifts a jug to his lips and drinks in silence. Somewhere, unseen, a door closes, the wooden echo lingering longer than it should. The sound of the river remains constant. It is the only thing that moves freely, untouched by he. Beneath the bridges it glows like metal, its current deep and deliberate. Every few moments a piece of debris floats past, a flower, a fig leaf, the shell of a fruit, small proofs of motion in a world that has nearly stopped. Then, slowly, the first sign of change, a shadow sliding across the courtyard wall. It lengthens. The air shifts. A single breath of wind moves through the city, gathering the scent of stone and grain and carrying it toward the hills. Another follows cooler. The loses its hardness. The colors begin to return. People emerge again, one at a time at first, then more. Voices test the air cautiously. A cart rolls from a shaded street into the open square. The sound of hooves, sharp and sudden, startles the pigeons into flight. Their wings scatter dust and light in equal measure. Evening begins its slow approach. The sun, now lower, spreads its warmth more gently. The river brightens again, shifting from dull bronze to molten gold. The fisher boats upright. The baker relights his fire. The city exhales. And as the air cools, Rome gathers itself once more, not awakening, not changing, only continuing as it has always done. The light fades imperceptibly. Shadows reclaim the walls. The day folds inward, seamless, eternal, carried forward by the river's unbroken song. By late afternoon, the city begins its slow descent into gentleness. The harsh white light of noon softens into a pale amber glow that brushes the faces of those who step once more into the streets. Every surface seems to breathe again. The heat retreats upward, leaving the air light enough to move. A breeze stirs the awnings above the market, loosening the fabric, letting them sigh like sails against the day's last warmth. The Tiber, bright and still, carries the sun's reflection down its length in a long, trembling path. Near the bridge, a fisherman kneels, washing his hands in the water. The ripples spread outward, distorting the mirrored arches and scattering the gleam into 1,000 fragments. The river, restless yet patient, accepts them all without change. In the narrow lanes above the riverbank, the marketplace begins to rouse again. Vendors open their stalls for the evening trade, arranging small piles of fruit, jars of oil, bundles of herbs tied in twine. The sound of voices returns, not loud, but layered, as if the city is remembering how to speak after hours of silence. A child laughs, a dar. Echo of a cartwheel passes through the square. The baker stands at his window again, brushing flour from his arms. The oven burns low and steady. Fresh loaves rest in rows, their crusts dark and glossy. The scent drifts through the air, joining with the smell of roasted grain and dust. Two women stop to buy bread. Coins clink softly against the counter. One of them lifts the loaf to her face, inhales and smiles before walking away. A group of stonemasons leave their work near the fora. Hammers hang at their sides, their tunics streaked white with marble dust. They walk without speaking, their footsteps forming a single rhythm on the pavement. The dust follows them, glowing faintly in the light, swirling before settling into the cracks between stones. At a small fountain, a girl fills a clay jug, her reflection shifting in the water. The basin overflows, droplets falling in slow succession to the ground. The sound is faint, but in the quiet air it seems enormous. She lifts jug to her hip and disappears into the turning alleyways, leaving a damp trail behind her. The light gathers low along the river. It glances off the undersides of the bridges, painting the stones with the color of honey. Boats drift homeward, their oars rising and falling in time with the fading current. Each stroke is followed by a pause long enough to let the river decide its own pace. The city begins to cool. Shadows lengthen, climbing the walls of houses and reaching into the courtyards. The scent of olive oil and wood smoke thickens. Somewhere a bell sounds, long and low, marking the slow unwinding of the day. Its tone carries across the rooftops, settles over the river, fades, and is replaced by another, a deeper note from farther away. In the workshop of a metalworker, the final sparks of the day fall into the dust. He quenches his tools in a bowl of water. The steam rises and vanishes into the beam of light that cuts through the doorway. He sits back, stretching and watches the color of the world change. The gold fades from the walls, the blue deepens above the rooftops. The sound of the city thins to murmurs. The baker closes his shutters. The fishermen tie their last knots. The marketplace empties slowly, leaving behind the faint smell of fruit and ash. A few torches are lit, their flames small and uneven in the growing dusk. The Tiber darkens once more, its surface turning from gold to iron to black glass. It gathers the last light of the flicker of lamps, the glow from doorways, and carries them away. The bridges shimmer, their arches reflected perfectly until a breeze breaks the water and scatters the image into threads of light. The city breathes out. No one speaks loudly now. Footsteps grow softer. Doors close one by one, the sound gentle, familiar. The air cools further, smelling of river and stone and smoke. Above, the first stars appear, faint against the last color of the sky. They tremble in the water below, as Tiber were their twin. Rome settles again into its long, patient rhythm. The day ends not with finality, but with the quiet turning of the world, the same motion it has always known. The river flows. The city endures. The light fades, and nothing breaks the stillness but the endless breath of the Tiber, whispering softly through the heart of time. Evening descends completely, not as darkness but as surrender. The last color drains from the sky, leaving only the faintest glow above the hills. A line of fading gold dissolving into blue, then into the quiet of night. The air holds a cool weight now, touched with the scent of smoke and river mist. The city exhales, and everything that was motion becomes memory. The marketplace is empty. The stalls stand covered, the baskets overturned, the dust settled. A stray dog noses through a heap of discarded stems, finds nothing, and curls beneath a bench. The cobblestones still hold a trace of warmth, but the shadows have claim. The noise of the day has folded inward, not gone, only sleeping. Down by the Tiber, the water has turned to shadowed silver. It moves in silence, unbroken except for the faint stir of an oar far downstream. Lamps flicker along the embankment, their flames trembling against the wind. Each one casts a narrow path of gold across the surface before being pulled apart by the current. The bridges shimmer above them, half reflected, half imagined. A fisherman sits beside his overturned. One final tear in his net. His hands move without thought, the gestures as old as the river itself. When he finishes, he folds the net neatly, stands, and looks out across the water. For a moment he sees nothing but the faint reflection of the moon. Then he nods to no one and walks home through the soft hiss of wind against reeds. On the opposite bank, the baker's window glows faintly. Inside, the fire burns low, red at its core. He wipes the table, sets aside the last. Palms against the warm wood. His shoulders relax, his breath slows. Outside, footsteps pass, the last of the day's movement, then fade into the distance. He lowers the shutter. The light disappears. The forum lies silent. The marble gleams faintly under the moon, edges softened, surfaces pale. The statues cast no shadow now, their forms seem suspended between stone and air. The columns, the arches, the steps, all glow with the same faint light, as if the moon had poured itself in and left it hollow with peace. A breeze drifts down from the hills, stirring the leaves in the courtyards. Curtains move behind half-open windows. Somewhere, a lute plays, not a song, not even a melody, only single notes spaced by silence. The sound carries for a moment, then folds into the stillness as though it had always belonged there. The night watchman crosses the final bridge. His lantern is unlit. He no longer needs it. The path is clear beneath the moon. He stops mid the parapet. The water below gleams softly, carrying its faint light toward the sea. It is the same river he has watched every night, and yet different as the world always is when seen in silence. He closes his eyes, hearing only the slow rhythm of the current. A bird stirs in the reeds. The air cools further, drawing the scent of damp earth and worn rope. He straightens, nods once to the water and walks on. His footsteps fade, leaving only the river's voice. Across the city, doors close. A hush spreads through every street, settling like a blanket over the stones. The last sounds are small, the turning of a latch, the sigh of fabric against a window, the faint rustle of wind through vines. The Tiber flows on, gathering all that remains, the glimmer of dying flames, the trace of warmth, the echo of the day's voices. It carries them softly, endlessly, out toward the unseen horizon where the stars meet the sea. Above it all, Rome sleeps. The city glows faintly. The moon, not dead, not still, only resting, eternal, unchanged. The breath of the river rises and falls like a heartbeat beneath it, the steady pulse of centuries continuing unseen. And when the last echo fades, there is nothing left but the whisper of water against stone, timeless, patient, endless, as Rome, ancient and luminous, drifts once more into the quiet eternity of its own dream.